Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello all Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So for today's episode, folks, we're going to talk about something that, you know what, I never considered before. We're going to take a look at something in a completely different perspective. We're going to take a look at something in a completely different angle. Because, again, a lot of the conversation this offseason has centered around the different types of things of the change that have been associated with the Lions. And I'm going to be honest, most of that change has been a topic of not necessarily a good thing. It's been mostly a topic of negative emotions. And if you realistically think about it, much of this conversation has been focused on one of two topics. It's been focused on one of two areas of conversation. The one area that it's been focused on is how the team has lost certain players, such as, hey, you know what? Frank Ragnow's retired. Kevin Zeitler's no longer with us. We don't have Zadarius Smith back. And again, we've talked about that a little bit. Another area where it has been primarily focused on, where it's primarily been centered on, has been upon the fact that the Detroit Lions also have lost coaches. And there was quite a massive coaching exodus this offseason, which that happens with good teams. Good teams will lose coaches, and it's part of the business. But I'm going to tell you this right now. Of those two conversations, of those two topics, the one that has definitely garnered more attention, the one that has definitely gotten a much bigger reaction, a bigger, focus of the conversation, has been about the Lions losing coaches. That has been probably the biggest area where a lot of conversation has come out about the Lions taking a step back in 2025. And specifically where that conversation is coming about is from Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. Now, I'm going to say this right now. Depending upon what part of the spectrum you're on, either you're not really all that concerned with the loss of the coaches, or you think it's going to be an Achilles heel of the Lions in 2025. That's pretty much where the spectrum is. And anywhere within that spectrum, there's a swinging pendulum of where some people are going to be at. But I'm going to say this right now. Regardless of where most people are on that spectrum, one of those two scenarios, I'm going to say this. Most people still have a negative viewpoint. They're like, oh yeah, still losing those coaches, still losing them is going to be a bad thing, even if you're not all that concerned about it. However, though, my new perspective that I'm going to put out there before, the one that I've never considered before, or rather I have never spoken about it in the way I'm about to speak about it right now, is that rather than it being viewed as a negative thing, honestly, I think it should be viewed as a positive thing. And I'm going to explain to you why, because I know that for some people, the thought process of me saying, oh, losing coaches is a good thing, that's something that's going to absolutely kind of like, just absolutely bust their brain, because it's like, why would losing coaches be considered a good thing? Well, let me just explain something to you here. I know some people might think I'm off my rocker with that, and you know what? That's fine. But hear me out before you actually just jump to making a judgment. Because the argument people are going to have is how exactly could losing two seasoned coordinators be considered a good thing? How is that something that you can look at that and somehow come out with a positive outcome? Well, I'm going to explain it to you. The reason why I think that there is a positive outcome for the Detroit Lions when it comes to losing the coaches is because of what it means now going into 2025. Here's the reason why I say this. There's actually a couple. But the first reason I can say is this. New eyes are going to see things differently. Let's understand something here. Yes, Johnson and Glenn, they had been in their position for a couple of years. Glenn had been in the position for 4. Johnson had been in the position for 3. And when we think about it, actually, no. 2021, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, so 4 years for Glenn, 3 years for Johnson. When you consider that, when coaches have been in a certain area, a certain specific, job title for a lengthy period of time, and they've operated with the same kind of, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to achieve it, you kind of get blind a little bit to certain things because, hey, this has been your normal operating pattern. This is what you've been used to doing. And for me, it's like, listen, nothing against Glenn, and as much as I don't like Johnson right now, I will say this. Both of those guys, while they were good at what they did, they weren't they weren't perfect. There was things that they definitely missed. There were things that they definitely overlooked, and everybody and their brother knows it. Well, you have to think about it. If they had gotten used to doing what they were doing and said, okay, this is how we're going to operate within this, little spectrum or this little bubble of what is our normal pattern, then things are going to fall by the wayside where it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't think that this is something that we need to focus on as much. Or maybe this isn't something that I think that is as important to deal with right now. We're going to deal with something else. Well, now you have guys like Shepard and Morton who are coming in. They're going to look at things with a completely different mindset. They're going to look at things with a completely different set of eyes. And what that typically does is it allows somebody to come in and say, okay, yeah, I see what you were doing here. I see what you were doing there. And while that's all great, grand, and glorious, there are certain things that we could have addressed here that were not addressed. There are certain things that we could have improved upon that were not given a chance to improve or to grow. And so having that ability to look at a certain situation and say, okay, here's what I'm inheriting, and this is good, but there are certain areas where I believe that this was not properly addressed or not as addressed as much as it should have been. And so now I'm going to look at things a little bit differently. I'm going to address things a little bit differently. And so now you're going to get a person that's going to bring a completely new perspective in on how to get more out of what you've already gotten. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, this is kind of building off of the first reason, but new people also bring new ideas. Again, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, yes, like I said, they had their way of running things, but they also had their ideas of how they wanted things ran. They had their ideas about how they wanted the offense and defense to be. And they had their own concepts within that about, hey, this is how I'm going to want this to be executed. This is how I'm going to want this to be ran. Well, again, when you have a new coach that comes in, they're going to be like, okay, yeah, this is what the guy before me did, but I see a different way of doing this. I see a better way of doing this. I see a different concept about how we can get to where we're wanting to go. And that right there changes something that's good because it allows you to say, okay, this is what we've been doing for X amount of time. And while that has produced some pretty damn good results, I have ways that I believe can make it even better because I've already seen what the guys before me have done. And now I can say, okay, I can take that and now I can apply my own little flavor. I can apply my own little twist to things and make it even better. And to me, when you think about that, especially with both Morton and Shepard, you have to factor this in when you're doing this because Morton was there when the offense first got implemented. So he already knows exactly what the offense is just because of the fact that he was there when the offense got first, installed and was there as part of the whole building process. Shepard has been there since the beginning. He has seen what Glenn has done. And I'm not going to say that Shepard has always agreed with Glenn. I don't have any evidence or basis to say that. But I'd be willing to bet that there are things that Shepard would have wanted to do differently than what Glenn would have done. So having new people or having people that have different concepts or different ideas to build upon what's already been put in place, that helps because it allows you to grow. It allows you to expand. It allows you to take a look at things that maybe the person that was in front of you before you was not willing to consider. So that's reason number two. Reason number three, let's just call it for what it is. By the time Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson had left, coaches around the NFL had already kind of figured out, okay, this is exactly what they're going to do. Their tendencies were known, their strategies were known, everybody knew exactly how those two guys were going to get their units to operate, what they were going to do with their game plans. One thing we knew about Ben Johnson is he liked to run trick plays. He liked to get very creative. He liked to get very outlandish with his play calling. So it was like, okay, we always have to be aware in the back of our minds that Johnson is probably going to pull out a trick play or two every single game. We also knew that Ben Johnson would sometimes like to overload throwing the ball, and then other times would like to overload running the ball. He wasn't as balanced as, it would like to be at times. It kind of went in swoons, if you will. Whereas with Glenn, the one thing we knew about Glenn is he was an extremely aggressive play caller. He loved to call a lot of blitzes. He loved to bring a lot of pressure. But the problem is he didn't do anything else other than that. We didn't really see a whole lot of stunts. We really didn't see a whole lot of different things with the defensive line. So again, those tendencies, those strategies that I'm talking about, opponents already knew what to kind of expect from those coaches, and they could game plan off of that. With Shepard and Morton, there's no such thing. Because let's understand something here. John Morton hasn't been an offensive coordinator since, 2017? And Shepard has never been a play caller. So there's absolutely no film on Shepard as far as his tendencies or his strategies for wanting to be a play caller. And what film there is on for John Morton, that is literally almost a decade old. So you can't use that really. And on top of that, it's with a completely different team. Offensive strategies, offensive game plans, offensive concepts have completely changed over the last 10 years almost. So it's like you don't really know what you're expecting from John Morton and Kelvin Shepard. And that unknown factor, that mystery factor, is going to be an advantage. And that then again builds into my next point, which is reason number 4, which is that mystery element, which is that unknown factor. Because if you don't know what somebody's going to do, or you don't have the ability to try and guess what they're going to do, you have to cover for everything. You have to say, okay, I don't know what this person's going to call. I don't know how this person is going to react. I don't know what this person is going to put forward as a potential game plan. Which means you have to cover all of your bases. You have to plan for everything. And here's the one thing I can tell you. You cannot plan for everything. You cannot have a contingency for everything. And you especially cannot do it when you're talking about the Lions' offense and defense. There's simply just too much firepower. There's simply too much talent to do that. Because on either side of the ball, the Lions have weapons everywhere. Offense, you have J-Mo, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you have Gibbs, you have Montgomery, you have Laporta, you have Patrick, you also have Tesla, you have Jared Goff leading the way. On defense, you have Hutch, you have McNeil, you have Campbell, you have Reed, you have Burt, you have Branch, you have Kirby. I mean, you cannot plan for all of that. It's hard enough just trying to make sure you have the basics down if you know who you're going up against, if you know who the coach on the opposite sideline is and what their tendencies are. It's a completely different kettle of fish if you're talking about somebody that, oh, by the way, they haven't called plays in almost 10 years, or they've never called plays at all. You have absolutely nothing to go off of. You have absolutely no idea what their strategy is going to be. And that mystery element, that unknown factor, is going to be a distinct advantage that the Lions have going into 2025 with Morton and Shepard. So that's reason number 4. Now, other reasons that I have are more specific to the actual coaches themselves. Let's talk about John Morton for a quick moment here. When it comes to John Morton, the reason why I say that it's good that he's here and Johnson is gone in that sense is because of the fact that his vast experience and knowledge of the game that he has built up over the years is a massive advantage comparatively to when Ben Johnson got here. Again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. When Ben Johnson came to Detroit to be the offensive coordinator, this is a guy who had no experience calling plays. This is a guy who literally had only been a pass game coordinator for half of a season. So he was coming into that situation brand spanking new. He had no prior experience. He had no prior training. He was literally just, hey, you know what? This is the situation. We need you to pick this up and we need you to run with it. which is why John Morton was relied so heavily upon in 2022 when the offense was first being installed because, oh, that's right, he actually has done that. He has installed offenses. He has built offenses. He has ran offenses. He knows what to look for. He knows what makes offenses work. Again, John Morton has worked under some of the best head coaches and best offensive minds in the business. He's worked under Sean Payton. He's worked under John Gruden. He's worked under Jim Harbaugh. He knows what those guys do as far as offenses are concerned and why it is successful because wherever they have gone, the offenses have been successful. So that vast experience and knowledge that he has puts him in a very clear, distinct advantage over where Ben Johnson was. Plus, on top of that, you have to consider this. When Ben Johnson was first coming into the role, he was, again, still kind of new to the whole situation in Detroit. He was figuring out, okay, who do I have in Goff? What do I have in Amon-Ra St. Brown? What do I have in these players? He was kind of figuring it out as he went along. John Morton has already been there for some of that. He was there when Amon-Ra St. Brown first got there. He was there when J-Mo first got there. He was there when Goff was there. So he already has a working relationship with those guys, and he already has a very deep knowledge of what the Lions offense already is, but he's now bringing his own little twist to it. So again, that puts him in a very distinct advantage over where Ben Johnson was when he first took the job. Now, moving from John Morton over to Kelvin Shepard. Kelvin Shepard is an interesting case because Kelvin Shepard, as I said, has not called plays before. But let's also understand something here. Before Aaron Glenn became the defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, he hadn't called plays either. Both of these guys were brand spanking new when they came into that responsibility. But the difference between Glenn and Shepard is that when Glenn came in, he had had no prior relationships with virtually anybody that was in the Detroit Lions locker room. Virtually everybody was new to him. There were a few exceptions. I'm not going to deny that. But you have to think about it in stark contrast to where Kelvin Shepard is. Kelvin Shepard has spent the last 4 years with the team. He already knows all those guys that are on the defensive side of the ball. He knows that locker room. He knows the chemistry. He knows the brotherhood that defense has. He knows exactly what those guys can do. And likewise, those players also know what to expect from him. It's not like they're breaking in each other. It's not like, okay, we're kind of feeling each other out. We're kind of getting an understanding of who these guys are, not only as a coach to a player, but also a player to a coach. That doesn't have to happen with Kelvin Shepard. He's already been there. He's already broken that ground. That ground was broken long ago. So the players already know what to expect from Kelvin Shepard. They know his style of play. They know what he expects from them. And they know that, hey, this guy's going to be aggressive. He's going to expect us to work hard. And they know that for the most part, a lot of the same concepts that Glenn had, Shepard is probably going to follow with too. Again, he's going to obviously put in his own twist. He's going to put in his own little flavor in there. But again, Kelvin Shepard is coming into a situation where Aaron Glenn was in completely brand new territory. Plus, on top of that, Kelvin Shepard is inheriting a defense that already has all of the talent that's with it. Because think about it, when Aaron Glenn came in 2021, this defense didn't have much of any talent. It was pretty much a bare cupboard. That is not the case with Kelvin Shepard coming into 2025. He has Hutch, he has McNeil, he has Tyleik Williams, he has DJ Reader, he has Jack Campbell, he has Alex Anzalone, he has DJ Reed, he has Terry Arnold, he has Brian Branch, he has Kirby Joseph. He has all of these pieces. So for him, he is getting a much, how should I say this? He's getting a hand up on over what Glenn had because he's already got all those pieces there. He already knows those pieces, and those pieces already know him. So overall, that's why I'm saying that, yes, even though Johnson and Glenn are gone, that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, in my opinion, I view it to be a good thing. Now, yes, some people are going to say, well, David, they're still different. They're still going to take time to figure everything out. I don't think it's going to take as much time as what y'all are might thinking. Because in my opinion, again, Kelvin Shepard's been there for the last 4 years. He was being tutored under both Campbell and Glenn to take over for the defensive coordinator job. So it's not like there's much of a learning curve there for him. And as I just stated with John Morton, he was there when the offensive install was being done in 2022. He knows this offense. He knows what the offense works well with. He knows what the offense can do well with. But he also knows there are certain things that probably Ben Johnson did not do that, hey, you know what? I can expand upon this. I can go and do further with this, just like with Kelvin Shepard taking over for Aaron Glenn. That's why I'm saying, don't look at the situation as just a total bad situation. Don't look at it as a loss all around. There's actually a lot of good that can come out of getting new guys in this situation. Now, I will say this. If Kelvin Shepard had never been with the Detroit Lions, or John Morton had no association with the Detroit Lions prior to this would be a completely different kettle of fish. But that's not the case here. Both of these guys have prior relationships with the team. They've both worked with the team prior to this, so they already know what they're getting themselves into. They already know a lot of the personnel that they're already working with. So again, that's why this is a positive for the Detroit Lions. It's not a negative. And that's why I'm presenting this in a different perspective because, again, there are a lot of people that want to say that without Glenn and Johnson, this team's going to fall apart or it's going to regress. I don't believe that that's going to be the case, and I've laid out my evidence as I have so plainly done in this episode. But anyway, you all will do with that information what you will. Some people will agree with me. Some people might say, I can see what point you're going with, but I don't fully agree with you. And some people might just disagree with me on principle or just say, I don't agree with you at all no matter what you say. That's totally fine. But all I do ask is, please be respectful. Having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I hope you all enjoyed the content. Hope you all enjoyed the information. If you did, I hope to gain your subscription, but I also hope you hit that bell notification icon so you guys never miss any more content that I push out. I hope everyone has something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.